Amazing, amazing. And Jaymee, we so look forward to hearing you speak. So welcome.
Well, I'm already a mess. I just want to say hi to you all. Thank you for being here. And I'm already so much. It's good tears. Really good.
Yeah, we feel you.
I just can't believe that I'm here. It's a really good feeling. To be used in this way. And this all came from surrender. All the many times I thought that I found myself, I was lost. I was still trying to be somebody. And I'm in a room full of nobodies who like me. Thank you so much. Or the best of me. I said something recently to my partner, and by the way, I want to give credit to my partner, Lacey, who may or may not be watching at this moment. But she picked that Ernest Holmes quote. She's gotten so much out of Ernest Holmes, out of Science and Mind. And these were all, this way of life and this way of seeing the world was very new to her a few years ago before she met me. And she's gotten so much out of it. And I come from a tradition of Christian Science. My grandmother, there was discord in her family. She was actually the child born of rape. My great grandmother was raped and had the child, and that was my grandmother. And she by the time she was in her early, like 11 or something, she just felt that something was missing in her household. She was raised by my great grandmother and my great aunt, and they did an amazing job. And my grandmother, God bless her, she just thought that the answer was somewhere in religion. She thought that there was something missing, and so she knew the neighbors went to church, and so she hitched a ride with the neighbors in Pasadena to a church, and ended up being Christian Science. And it just touched her so deeply, and she brought it home to her household, and it transformed her whole household and the next 3 generations, including me. So I just want to give a lot of credit. I want to give a lot of credit to my grandmother, Annabelle, who's 92 and living very strong, and is just runs her own business. Yeah. I don't think she's here, but she can hear wherever she is. I really believe that. And she raised us all. She had 6 children, raised them all in Christian Science, and it filtered on down to me, her grandchild. And I didn't like going to church when I was younger. I mean, I didn't understand why I needed to dress up, and it was sort of as good as organized religion can be. There's some things about it that I feel like are in need of drastic revision, along with man's ideas. The ideas of the last few thousand years, are just a lot of them are unrevised, and I feel like it's the opportunity that we all have now to be able to look back at everything that's been done and to see where we can refine it and make it more pure. And today I'm glad that I dressed myself and that I get to be Jaymee today, but what I really am is I'm an instrument. And I found that deep into my experience. I was a drug addict early on in my life. I had things happen that probably happened to a lot of people in this room. A lot of painful things, a divorce that didn't make sense to me, and talk about intuition today. I'm so glad that was brought up. I was divorced from my intuition very early on because I felt that things were going on, and people told me, no, that's not happening. No, everything's fine. And there was smiles and like, no, really, mom and dad are fine, you know, and mom and dad weren't fine. And I stopped believing the voice in me that was saying, that was harmonizing with my environment, you know, and knew that something was wrong. And so I stopped believing that voice very early on, and that was my intuition. And many other things happened, you know, sexual abuse found me, and you know, I didn't know what to do with it all, you know, and I didn't do well in school because of it, and I was put in therapy, and I finally got to be honest with somebody about what was going on with me, and you know, you know, nothing happened, no changes happened in my family life at that time, and so I just figured out that I was going to be anybody other than myself. That being me hurt too much, and so I'm going to try and be anybody else. And so I spent the next 13 years of my life just lying about everything, you know, and that non-authenticity, you know, that trying to be somebody in the world, that trying to fit in, you know, and trying to be the vision in other people's eyes, separated me from not only my intuition, but from my spiritual side, which I didn't even know was alive and well in me all along. You know, all through all this stuff, these are just the things that happened to me. They're not who I am. You know, they're not who we all are. And I got sober after a really terrible time with drugs. I ended up homeless in downtown LA, just wandering the streets. I ended up in my boxer shorts and just nothing else. And they weren't even a good pair of boxers. It was real. But while I was down there, I heard a voice. I was sitting on the curb, and I heard this voice say, "You're not supposed to be here. Keep going." And I took it to be the voice of God. I didn't know where it came from, you know, and I'd never had anything like that happen to me. So I moved from that curb that I was sitting in to go sit somewhere else, and the next morning this van pulled up, and they were taking people to a treatment center, and I actually weighed my options, sitting on Skid Row in my boxers, going like, I don't know if I want to do this, you know, like I had better things to do, you know, but I was a broken person, and I was sitting with all the pain inside of me, and I thought that that's who I was, you know, and I ended up getting sober, and really starting to put a spiritual life together. I saw that I had a part in everything that I'd ever done. In some way, that the things that had been done to me, I was doing to other people. You know, I had been doing to other people on some level, not to the severity. I wasn't sexually abusing anyone, but in some way, the manipulations of things and the lying, I had been dishonest for a long period of my life, and I was very confused. And I met somebody who got me meditating and working with A Course in Miracles very early on. And this same person was sort of my mentor, and he went to Tibet. And shortly after working with him, I'd been working with him about a year, and I was about a year sober, really wanting to learn more about myself. I had some yearning to be more than my story, you know, than everything that had happened. And I didn't even know that. And I really was drawn to the East. Growing up, I loved the smell of Indian food, and I liked the sound of sitars, and you know, I was kind of drawn to Tibetan Buddhism, but I didn't have any import with it. And so this man, this mentor of mine, his name is Vic, he went to Tibet, and he came back, and it's very rare to get into Tibet, you know, especially being a 6'7" white man, you know, like very difficult to do. But he did, and he met this teacher who it was one of the Dalai Lama's teachers, and he brought home this meditation to me, and it changed my life. And I started seeing that I was more than my thoughts, and it started reconnecting me with my Christian Science upbringing, which was, you know, the notion that God is love, you know, that God is everywhere in all of us, that I'm it, that you're it, that it's everywhere. And I believe that to this day, you know, and I think that the less that we become the story of the things that have happened to us, and the more that we attune ourselves to this space within, you know, this is where the street monk thing started coming in, because I consider myself an ordinary, everyday street monk, deep undercover for the divine, sort of just looking like everyone else, not trying to stand out necessarily. And in my not trying to stand out, I seem to stand out, which is the funny thing. So I was having this experience with Buddhism, and it was really changing me. And it was also connecting me, like I said, to my divinity. And I started really feeling like, this thing growing in me. But I also was going from the extreme of drug addiction and hurt to now the extreme of this identity as a person in recovery and somebody who was like identified with how much time that I had sober and how many people I could help. And it's still an egoic construct of a Jaymee, and now Jaymee was this new form, but it was still just another story, and so at a certain point, through doing all these music accomplishments, and yeah, it's really interesting to hear these credits of mine. That was some former version of me still. The me that stands here before you doesn't even relate to being the doer of any of that stuff. Those were all my attempts to be somebody in the world. And at a certain point, the universe, I really believe that it speaks to each of us, and it's been around the whole time trying to send us messages. And synchronicities show up, and some are just mind blowing that you just can't even, like the intricacy and the specificity of synchronicities that happen to us, that speak to us in this way. I started having more and more of those experiences, but my identities were all crowding me. And this is about 10 years into this recovery. And I realized that all these were just ideas of me. They were ideas of Jaymee. And the world started shutting down. Like all of the things that I was able to do and hide in started to close up. And I saw that these identities were killing me in a weird way. It was not creating a quality of life. And so I've been going to Ahaya, which is in Pasadena, the Center for Spiritual Living there. And I've been going to Self-Realization Fellowship. I really feel a strong connection to Yogananda. I feel like he's been watching me all throughout my life, and that's a whole other story. But all these rich traditions, Tibetan Buddhism, self-realization, Center for Spiritual Living and religious science, Christian Science, all these things, I'm finding that they all intersect. They're truths that are just many roads to get there, but they all are showing us the same thing. There's more going on than we see, and so the street monk thing sort of came as like, I surrendered in 2013. I was just tired of all the identities, and I thought I need to just surrender all the ideas of me. And if there really is this God that I really believe that there is, that it will use me in some way. And so I quit doing music drastically because it was another construct of me. And I quit doing everything except for meditating in the morning and asking sincerely to be used. Use me. I used to say, take my life and make of it what you will. And I really meant it. And what started happening was this inner reserve of mine started building, even though the world outside was started to crumble around me. My marriage was starting to show signs of discord. I didn't know how I was going to make any money if I wasn't a musician. Who am I? What ended up happening was, this place that's in us, this place that's in me, became the more real place than what I was seeing on the outside. And I started having realizations of like, all these times in my life where I've been hurt, I thought, who would it have been nice to have there? What would they say? What would they be like to me? How would they approach me? Like a big brother or a mother or, somebody that was there in these moments that it would have been nice to come up and say the right thing. I thought, who would that person be? And so I just started figuring out who that would be, and I became that person for others. I thought, I'm going to be the person I needed most for you. And that's what the street monk thing is. It's sort of being deep undercover for the divine and becoming who I needed most now for you. You know? And so in that year, I worked for somebody who was I got a job at a welding shop, and that was nothing that I'd ever done. I'd never gotten my hands dirty on a job, you know, and I was making an honest pay for an honest day's living, and an honest day's work, and the guy I was working for was a blackout drunk, and he was welding parts for aerospace, completely deep in intoxication, and he would tell me all these stories about his life and the difficulty that he's had and these really painful moments, and I listened because that wasn't me anymore. The part of me that was not me could listen and to really be there for somebody else and not judge. And I found that that was becoming a larger part of me. And the inner reserve was growing, and I was doing this work with this one person and hearing all his stories and not going to those places of judgment or running away, but being there and being a present, conscientious, sort of compassionate observer. And at about a year of working for that guy while meditating every day and still making this the bigger part of my life is just tapping in and asking to be used each day. And none of my ideas anymore, you know, I'm done with my ideas. You know? And I would just show up to life and the next right thing would happen, and it's been that way. At the end of that year of working for him, he shut me out of his life because I got too close to him, I think. You know, I knew all his stories, and he couldn't bear the thought of being so close to somebody who he just couldn't understand. So he shut me out of his life, and I just walked for like 2 weeks. All I did was just walk and mend my heart. You know, here's another loss of identity. Here's another thing that I've been involved in that, you know, and I went out to, a friend of mine had opened up a drug and alcohol treatment center in Malibu, and I knew he wasn't fond of Malibu. So I was like, what's going on here? Why is he out there? So I went to go visit him. And that year of connecting with God in the way that I was and making meditation the biggest part of my life and attuning myself to the will of God for me, you know. The owners of this treatment center, they met me and they looked at me and they're like, you have to work here. We want you here. Please try it. Don't say no. Just come and just give it a week. And it was about 60 miles away from where I was living. But here I was, I couldn't say no because I've shown up here and here's God showing up again. And so I started going to, it was in Malibu and I lived in Pasadena. And so I was doing these long drives and being happy to go anywhere where I was called to go. And I ended up in a short amount of time becoming a spiritual director of that place and teaching all these people who were coming in freshly, you know, off of their addiction and mental health issues, showing them this place that's in all of us, rather than creating new identities and, you know, creating new stories or things that have happened to us, tapping into that place. And also met this Lakota elder who invited me to co-facilitate sweat lodges with him. I did that for the next 3 years, bringing all these people from the treatment center, you know, all these kids in their 20s who are used to being in these treatment centers that just churn them out a lot of the time and don't give them what they need. And now they're in sweat lodges with me and we're doing this beautiful work, you know, and for 3 years I did that. And that led to opening up my own center in Santa Barbara, really just showing people this, you know, showing people that you are not your story. Those are just the things that have happened. There is a very specific thing. You are in an individual expression of the universe that's taken temporary form as Jaymee or as all of you, you know, to find what that place is within you and to make this individual expression known, you know. But I just this has been the most important thing that I've ever done with my life, and to be here today and to speak with all of you, you know, and to share my experience with this and to share these songs also that have come from that same place. You know, I don't write the songs. I was, I was joking the other day. My partner was asking me. She said, you know, here, this food. She's like, it feels like it's too much of this or that, and she's like, what should I do? And I'm not a cook, you know. But she gave me this bite, and I was like, oh, here, we're gonna mix this, and we're gonna put this in this, and it's gonna balance it out. And I was like, and we can trust this advice because I'm not saying it. Like I have no idea what I'm saying, so we can trust that. It's sort of the notion of this, and it doesn't make much sense to people, who haven't had that experience. But I know that the best ideas that come from this place are meant to last. My ideas are temporary, but the ideas of this place that comes from within us are, in the Tibetan tradition, they call it Vajra nature, which just means indestructible. It's sort of the only lasting good in this life is things that come from this place. And we can always tell, we can always tell when we're involved in something, if we're getting mixed signals or things aren't clear, at least that's been my experience. And so, I found that working in the field that I worked in the last few years, like that people were hurting everywhere, and that I was sort of kept in this treatment center scenario. And the problems of the people who come in for treatment are the problems that everyone has, and they've just gone to extremes to numb themselves, but they're just the problems everywhere. And so I took myself out of that scenario, and the treatment center that I started in Santa Barbara, I got bought out of it, and I'm set loose on the world now. So I have this individual, I have this private practice now that is, if it were me, it wouldn't be half as successful. It wouldn't even be close. But the part of me that is the part of you that's listening from that place, it's doing all the work. And all I have to do really is to take care of myself, and I take care of my body, I take care of my mind, but most importantly, every day, I meditate before I do anything else, or else I don't really trust it. I don't really trust what comes out of me if I haven't tapped into that place. So that's become the most important thing to me. And really, I want to be my friend. I want to be loving to myself, and the best relationship, the closest relationship that we can have is the one with ourselves, and this reconnection with the child in me, the child that got divorced from his intuition, has now returned, and I talk to that kid all the time, and he's the one that's guiding me. Kids, they see it all, they really pay attention. All they want to do is play, and they're present, and so that's been really important work for me, to tap back into that and to allow that child to do the work and to trust it. My goal is to die to be my friend at my death. I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust anyone else to tell me that it's okay to go, but I know that I can trust myself, and I want to be there for me at that moment and say, it's okay, good work, it's time to go, you can let go, you can trust it. And that's the more real part of me is that place now. And I feel like this is probably all over the place, but it is so meaningful to me to be here to speak with you. And I was just overcome early on because I spent so much time in these seats. I've spent so much time, trying to be something my whole life. And then, the time that I try and not be anybody, all the good things happen. So that's my message to you today, is to be a deep undercover street monk everywhere you go, and use whatever is necessary in the moment, even non-spiritual terms, even coming at things from a way of connecting with someone with practicality. My spiritual condition is very practical, actually. It's based in a lot of practicality. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Sure. So let's just do a quick meditation.